Hello, this is your host, Todd Lewis, the Praise and Folly podcast. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe and hit the notification bell. You can follow me on Telegram and Facebook. And you can support me on Subscribestar, Locals, and Buy Me a Coffee. Today is episode 115 of the Casual Stream, How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love AI. This is a bit of a riff off of an episode I did a couple of years ago on how I learned to stop worrying and love the Great Reset. Now, that previous video for which is derived from the famous line from the film How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb by Dr. Strangelove. Now, here, this isn't so much tongue-in-cheek as it was with the last one on the New World Order and the Great Reset, but this is actually looking at where we're at now and making some projections on what I think will or could happen with AI and automation. Though, of course, it's more of a catchier title if I say AI. So we'll begin reading now. This discussion will not only be about AI programs, as the title might suggest, but also about the use of automation and the intersection between automation and AI programs. Together, these twin forces represent, in my mind, the future of the U.S. economy and infrastructure. There are several factors driving this trend of paramount importance as population. AI tools and automation replace humans in the production chain. This is good for business as it drives down costs. You have to hire fewer workers to manage it all, without all the hassle that managing workers introduces. Sure, you might have a handful of well-paid technicians to babysit the programs or even come up with new protocols, but that is still a massive savings in relation to all the technicians you replace. AI should be seen as an extension of the business practice to drive down the cost of labor, which in recent years has been manifested in the drive to saturate the market with technicians due to the propaganda for STEM professions over the last 80 years. Professions such as computer programmers, system engineers, data analysts, and other high-tech work as skilled labor obviously command high wages. This problem can be solved by suppressing the cost of labor by flooding the market with graduates from universities with such degrees. You still only hire the best, but the best is competing in a sea of other people he doesn't know won't be chosen. This is still not ideal. Why not just remove the person entirely? As I have stated before elsewhere, man is being conditioned to act like a machine, to become adapted to his machine environment. Turns out man doesn't make a good machine. Machines make better machines. With all of this technical infrastructure in place, these engineers and computer programmers have rendered themselves obsolete. They say they are irreplaceable, but then everybody says that right before they get replaced. The other issue is declining demographics. If it wasn't bad enough that these technicians are expensive, they're also in decline. Worldwide population levels are declining, which on a long enough time scale means the overall pool of technicians is declining. You could continue to import such workers, but that leads to political unrest at home, and you still have to do the importing. The mercurial growth stage of computer technology is slowing down. Now we just need managers to run the systems we have. AI tools are great for that. You also don't have to feed or pay AI. AI doesn't go on strike. There will be a ripple effect outside of tech as well. All the useless paper-pushing jobs can be handed over to AI. If we look at the Industrial Revolution, a lot of people did lose their jobs in the traditional sense of doing productive work with their hands in a craft or trade. This was replaced by bureaucratic jobs, aka make work. It was an expensive make work, but it allowed the state to control the other elements of the population. Managerial workers were loyal to the state, as the state paid their salary, biting the hand that feeds you and all that. The problem was not much of it was productive. These people are a fixed cost for government and corporations, and again, AI can do it better and cheaper. Elon Musk's Doge initiative can be seen as the vanguard of such efforts. As we are entering collapse, and cost-cutting is the name of the game, much like technicians, the bureaucrats are going bye-bye. Of course, there will still be a few humans involved in the process, but only for keeping an eye on the process. We can also see service being replaced by AI. In fact, we are already seeing it. Increasingly, fast food restaurants have automated kiosks that you can order from. We can further imagine you pay at the kiosk and only see a person when you're handed the food. Sort of like an in-person DoorDash. This means the forward-facing personal service are gone. The back line might be eliminated by automation over time, but I think that will take longer as preparing food is more nuanced than just the procedural aspect of ordering and paying for food. In summary, AI programs are poised to replace all sorts of non-creative work that is repetitive, managerial, and the word procedural. Procedural work doesn't really need to be done by humans. The real question is, when would the technology arrive to do it? This will be bad for both the base of the left and the right, as both public and private sector jobs will be slashed. Politically, this will force a pivot in the U.S. scene as the entrenched interests rooted in these jobs disappear with the jobs. This all sounds bad, and for a lot of people it will be. Yet it will be humorous watching all these libertarian and business conservative types get replaced by the very market forces they fetishize and be forced to eat the crow after telling millions to learn to code back in 2008 and 9. Well, now the AI codes. There are still goods to derive from this process, though. Let us imagine society as a complex machine, not hard because society is one. Progress through this machine can be likened to canal locks that one must pass through. Each lock is operated by some little toad who knows he can hold you up and maybe just doesn't like you and holds you up for the hell of it. You have filed all your paperwork, you have crossed your T's and dotted your I's, but still you're hitting a snag. You go through the runaround, maybe even debase yourself, and after some intermediate period of time, this little toad finally opens the lock and you are on your way. With AI tools operating each lock, everything is procedural and smooth. You move along lickety-split. Being without emotion, prejudice, or malice, the AI lock guardian has no reason to hold you back if you do your procedural work correctly. This will be a massive improvement in navigating society. It really will be as simple as just filing your paperwork or complying with procedure. You're not going to hear AI say, quote, "I don't like your tone," unquote, or, quote, "I don't like the way you're looking at me," unquote, or, quote, "You're from a culture war interest group that I'm opposed to, so I'm going to screw you over," unquote. These lock guardians in human form are just little shits. These are people who feel big by using the system, corporate or government, to hold you back. HR without the headache is what we're talking about. Automation is the use of machines to completely or nearly completely remove the human element from the production process. Japan has had robot factories for decades, likely driven by population decline and an unwillingness to import large foreign population groups. Why the West didn't take this route is curious. As with AI, there will still be some human involvement at the elite levels, but the production line will likely be automated. With the technologies involved, we can also imagine factories devoted to the production of airframes and shipping might also be automated like car manufacturing. One area in which many on the right smugly pat themselves on the back is that automation will not touch the trades, for example, plumbing. With the current U.S. housing situation of suburban sprawl and the maze of pipelines all over the heartland, automated machines would struggle to work in this environment. The problem is, as James Howard Kunstler and others state, suburbia is unsustainable. For example, when the supply of plumber goes down due to collapse and infrastructure is stretched to the limit, many suburban houses will just be abandoned as not feasible to live in or repair. When the plumbing breaks down, they will just be abandoned. What is likely to happen is the country changes how it plumbs and builds houses. Most PVC pipe is plastic, so why not imagine 3D printers printing PVC pipes and putting them into place with robot arms? This would entail a radical redesign of how we build housing units, but that has been the cost of industrialization all along. When the first factories were built, all of society pivoted to meet the needs of the factories, not the other way around. Ergo, society will pivot to meet the needs of automation. As Kunstler states, the trades in the U.S. mainly exist to service suburban sprawl, but if housing and plumbing are reimagined and redesigned, then automation can do a lot of the trade work. For example, imagine a utilities hub that contains plumbing and electrical with housing units radiating out from the central point. This is a plausible way to envision the rerouting of utility to serve the needs of automation. Self-driving cars and trucks are the other sticking point. If they get to the point at which they can drive on the road, a common objection is that they will crash into human drivers or have a hard time navigating the dynamic nature of the road. Again, this assumes that capital is not put first, which, as we all know, it always is. One could imagine certain roads that are only for automated trucks and cars, with prohibitions placed on human use. Problem solved. Furthermore, with rising fuel prices and the declining EROI of hydrocarbons, one might also see a return to railroads. From an engineering perspective, the train is still the most efficient way to transport goods and services over long distances on land. The train itself might be AI-driven as well. Furthermore, by being dependent on a track for movement, it need not worry about the dynamic changes a truck might have to deal with on the road. Between roads designated for self-driving vehicles only In a new rail network, U.S. car culture will likely fade out, leading to a radical change in U.S. culture. As more and more of society is replaced by AI programs and automated processes, everything becomes a lot more predictable and procedural, but at the same time more fixed and rigid. The more material culture you develop and the more you are dependent on that material culture, by definition, you lose freedom of action to that material culture. As this continued mechanization of society continues, Veblen's machine process will continue to erase variability. This means that society will look more and more managed, not by humans, but by machines, more streamlined, more scientific, and ultimately more socialist. The U.S. progressive era, which began in the 1890s, sought a rationally planned and scientific society. We are rapidly approaching this. The main problem is, unlike the old progressives who had generous welfare and safety measures for the workers, we are going to live in an increasingly poor country from the point of view of those on the bottom who have been displaced by the automation of their jobs. This will likely lead to some sort of UBI scheme, or if mishandled, a revolution. It was just such mismanagement of the Industrial Revolution in Russia which led to both 1917 revolutions. When AI and automation start taking the work that humans currently do, that is, the machine-like or machine-adjacent, there will be selection pressures for humans to produce things that cannot be produced by AI automation. One thing AI automation cannot do is produce sui generis products. If we look at the production of widgets, we can look at the unit costs of production and predict how much it will cost in future to build new widgets. What we cannot predict, either in terms of temporal arrival or cost of production, is something new. Ideas, inventions, and artistic expressions are all forms of sui generis production that humans alone can provide. This will lead to environmental and economic selection pressures for the creation of a demographic I call the creatives. Creatives will be people who are able to produce what machines cannot, new things. This could lead to technological innovation, but I think for a variety of reasons it will more likely be that they produce new work in what we would call the social sciences, history, literature, poetry, and philosophy. Primarily, this is because there are a whole host of problems, both psychological and physical, as well as environmental, that are being produced by the technological society that technology will not be able to solve. This is for two reasons. One, technology is the problem itself. Two, technology cannot come up with sui generis ideas. Technology and its expansion is the root cause of the problems of modernity. For example, nobody ever had chronic obesity before the 20th century. That is because before the 20th century, the vast majority of the population was not completely sedentary and consuming industrial waste products, masquerading as food. Technology is bound by itself. Technology is dependent on the physical world and environment it is being built on, not the other way around. It would have to reach outside of itself to come up with something new that it cannot do. A major reason why this is that even if you continue to feed information to AI programs, there is a bottleneck in understanding. The protocols and processing features are set in place by physical infrastructure of the computer itself. AI's ability to understand the physical world via inputs is nothing more than eliminative reductionism, or as C.S. Lewis called, nothing buttery. The problem with this is that at least half of the picture is left out and always will be. AI will not be able to develop sui generis ideas. The main reason for this is that it cannot step outside of itself or its programming to do so. Unlike humans, AI is bound by its own physical infrastructure. If we're looking at black swan events, specifically through the lens of sui generis productions, we have an exact description of the material conditions present in of a man's biology and are still not able to explain, say, how the Principia Mathematica was produced. It was Newton's genius which produced the revolution in physics, which is not explainable by an exhaustive description of the physical realities of Newton's day. Newton had insight and creativity, which he could look into himself and step outside of a merely materialist understanding of things. Well, most of this infrastructure for AI automation will be owned either by the state or large corporate firms, further squeezing independent business owners in the middle class. There will be a decoupling moment when these proprietors who still have capital to invest will see the writing on the wall for those professions already outlined and move towards something else. I'll argue this will be to the creatives. There are going to be two basic types, the visionaries and the performers. The visionaries are just those men who produce the sui generis content, such as new philosophical ideas, new musical compositions, new architectural forms, and more. They will be able to produce what AI automation cannot and will be able to begin the process of addressing the problems of technology. The performers will be those people who are integrated into the creative process. For example, imagine an orchestra. There's only one conductor, the visionary, and there is an orchestral ensemble of musicians, the performers. Most people could be trained to sing or play instruments, so one of the concerns for people who are being displaced and finding work could be solved by putting these displaced persons into creative support roles. If you look at the post-1945 economy rooted in STEM and construction as high IQ demanding, the future will be high EQ or emotional quotient demanding. Emotional intelligence will be key for reaching deep within to develop new ideas and creative modes of expression. This kind of work has been heavily suppressed in the industrial age. The opportunity for this kind of work to reemerge is dawning. For too long, the collective soul, tormented by evil spirits, has not had the David to play him his harp to soothe his spirits. Some might object that this work won't find patrons or buyers. Here's why I don't think this is the case. Even the bourgeoisie and political families need to cultivate good mental health. The denial of the spiritual at all levels of society is a global status effect. While not affecting everyone equally, it's still felt by all people. The rulers themselves don't want to go mad. The creation of authentic spiritual, artistic, and literary works will be a sort of food for that half of the human person that has been long suppressed and denied. Even the rulers cannot escape the ennui of modern times. From this, we can propose that some elites will fund this work in order to maintain mental stability. Furthermore, what about the displaced persons they rule over? Being displaced, aka poor, they will feel this ennui more strongly and be more volatile, which is bad for the machine process. Barring outright purges and extermination programs, these people need to be contained and given something to do. Well, this gets back to my orchestra analogy. So the void that fills the hearts of all modern men, even the wealthy who rule us, will need to be filled. This demand that the machine cannot fill will be the lifeline for creative work. With a reimagining of the trades and housing construction, the vast suburban sprawl and individuation will be replaced by more compact living arrangements and mass transportation. Trains will replace motoring in walkable cities, and more compact housing arrangements will provide the material conditions for human social interaction. One reason why everybody is alone and miserable is the entire set of material conditions we are living in is not built for human needs. Everything is spread out, isolated, and abstract. Communication has been shunted from face-to-face telecommunications, communal housing units to individual housing units, and so forth. This is not to say that communities will necessarily spring up again. In many cases, they will not. But this reworking of material conditions will provide the opportunity for a more human-level social existence. This is still collapsed, as the atomization of human life was due to a spread out of material conditions, which are the result of high energy states. Suburbia would never have existed in this way at lower energy states, and will cease to exist as we enter lower energy states. This is all to say that the long emergency doesn't have to begin terribly, though of course all of this could be mismanaged horribly and lead to revolution and destruction. The purpose of this program, though, is not to discuss what we all fear is coming, but to show how the future is still unmade and a better path lies before us. Oh, let's see. Wandering Panda, Seamus O'Blaine, Middleton Walker, and Corbin. Hello. Middleton Walker. Sui Generous was my high school nickname. That's funny. Well, everybody, I hope that gives you a lot to think on. That's a wrap up for tonight. Make sure to tune in on Thursday for Florian and I as per usual. This is Todd Lewis, the Praise of Fly podcast, signing off.